Welcome back to the channel. I'm Brian, and today we are talking about more sim racing, and I've been putting a good amount of hours in Gran Turismo 7, and I bought a new wheel, the Hori racing wheel. It's the PS5, but it also works with PlayStation 4 and PC. So I kind of wanted to talk about and compare the DualSense controller versus this cheap Hori racing wheel for the PlayStation 5. Before I bought it, I had my thoughts about, this comparison between the controller versus the sim wheel, but now that I have experiences in both the DualSense controller and the Hori racing wheel, I wanted to make this video and maybe make it more clear for you guys if you are a controller player and you are thinking about going with a racing wheel yourself. Some of these answers and conclusions that I have might help you make a decision whether it's worth upgrading or not. So the first thing I thought about when I was, thinking about upgrading from the controller to a, racing wheel, I thought maybe that I would get a big competitive advantage, and I'm trying to get better on the track and become a better driver overall. This is just simply not the case when you're going from a controller to a racing wheel, and for me, honestly, it was quite the opposite. It took me a lot of extra time to get better with the wheel than with the controller, and just some differences. When you're using the controller, you have the joystick and it is very small. So to go from one side to the other is very quickly and is very sensitive. So to get a more consistent outcome, that's what really, racing is all about. And it's being consistent, using the same quickest lines over and over and over again. So to get that to happen on the DualSense controller is a little bit more difficult. So, that's where people say that the winner of this isn't the controller, it is the racing wheel. But when you have gotten used to the same thing over and over again, it can take you some time to get used to it. So you may not have a competitive advantage going from a controller to a racing wheel, but the more advantage of the wheel, I think the biggest reason why you would want to upgrade is to get a more immersive experience and just to have an overall more enjoyable and fun time playing the games that you love. I'm not like a super competitive gamer. I just like to enjoy the games that I have and have the most fun with them. So if you are thinking about going from the controller to a racing wheel, just remember that the competitive advantage might not be there right away, but over time you will develop the skill with the wheel and you will become more consistent in your laps and race times. So the DualSense controller has a lot of great features when it comes to Gran Turismo 7. As racing game developers make more games, they will continue this trend. With my experiences playing Gran Turismo 7, haptic feedback with the triggers and the different vibrations, it definitely adds a great experience. I definitely had a lot of fun with the controller. Now, the sim racing wheel that I bought has no vibrations, no force feedback. It has really no features at all. It's just the wheel itself. And so I was a little hesitant thinking that this would kind of detract fun I was having because, like I said, I played about 15 hours with just the controller and it was a lot of fun. I beat the game. The features are nice, but I don't think you really need to have it in a racing wheel. Coming from a person that is just a casual gamer and likes to have as much fun as possible playing the games, that this controller is great, but you don't really need all the vibrations and features of the controller into the wheel itself. Now, the higher end sim racing wheels will have force feedback and some of them might offer vibration. If you can afford it, great. If not, I don't think it's going to detract from the fun that you're having with the game. Some of the negatives that come with the racing wheel is the biggest one being the price. I bought the racing wheel Apex by Hori. It was $120. You would think like, wow, that's actually pretty cheap considering the DualSense controller. If you were to buy a new one, it's going to cost you $74, $75, which is about $45 less than the racing wheel. Is $45 extra, just starting, is that worth, investing in your gaming? Obviously, there are definitely lots of pros and cons, and it's hard to answer this specific question, because it really comes down to how many hours you are putting into these racing games. And honestly, it's hard for me to recommend a racing wheel if you're really kind of just dabbling in it. But if you have the extra money and it's still worth putting the extra $45, or you know, even going further down and getting more into this, the better racing wheels, maybe the Logitech or the Thrustmaster to start off. Definitely it is worth the extra $45, but at the same time, if you don't have the money, the DualSense is still a great option, and you can still be very competitive in the game, have fun playing racing games, especially with the developers putting more and more features and making it more of an immersive experience with the DualSense controller. Is it worth buying a racing wheel if you are coming from a controller? I definitely think it's hard to answer this question, and you know, it might be frustrating to hear that it depends. Unfortunately, it depends if you are putting a lot of time, you know, you really enjoy racing games. If you are just a person that plays on and off a little bit, you may just want to stick to the DualSense controller, still enjoy the racing games. If you are thinking about it, if it's been on your mind, you've been doing research, you might want to just start at the bottom and buying a cheap racing wheel like I did. Hori makes a great option. If you don't like that option, maybe the Logitech or the Thrustmaster to kind of dip your toe in the water to see if this is going to be a thing that you're going to get into. It's definitely like any hobby. It can be a rabbit hole, and you can spend a lot of money, and you may waste your money if you don't commit to it. Put a little bit of money into it and then dive deeper. If you love it, you are going to have fun either way. That is the big takeaway. Just make sure you're having fun with your games. If you're interested in seeing my first impressions of the Hori Racing Wheel Apex for PS5, click on the video right here.